Hi guys, and welcome back to Keep Smiling Adventures, and today I thought we would do a little product test because you know these nights are long and they are very dark. So obviously we need some lights, especially when off-road. Now I have commuting lights which are fine for the road, but when you're off-road you obviously need to be able to see a lot more. There's things to crash into. But the lights are crazy expensive for mountain bike lights. Over £100, over £200, you could even spend £400, which quite frankly, I can't afford. It's too much, and yeah. So I wanted to test the really cheap ones that you see on Amazon and eBay. So I went on eBay and I found the cheapest light that looked somewhat decent in terms of brightness and power. So that's what we're going to do today. Once it gets dark, we're going to go out for a little ride and we're going to test this light. This light here cost me £12.89p. So will it be any good? The first impressions of just like the structure of it actually doesn't feel bad at all. The power button is nice and clicky, which is nice if you're wearing gloves. And this seems to be like the most common sort of light on like Amazon, eBay. They all have different brand names, so it's obviously one of these Chinese ones. This one is called something like, I think it says Wan Fire. I generally have no idea what that says. But it basically comes with a battery pack, which I have charged up, and then you can plug in via USB, which they also say this can be used with a standard power bank as well, which is quite useful for me because I do carry one of them. So let's plug it in, and then as you can see you get 3 indicator lights that you probably can't really see on this camera, but there's 3 there which indicate the power. So turning it on, initially it is pretty bright. That is the that's the lowest mode. Slightly higher mode, and then the highest mode. I will stop blinding you now. And it also has a flashing mode, which to be honest, I'm probably never going to use. Also in the box came a rear light, just a cheap USB rear light. This light cost me £12.89 for this and this rear light, which it doesn't seem very waterproof, but it might be a good little backup light. You know, it also comes with the charger, which is like this for the battery pack here. I generally have no idea what the battery pack size is. I don't know if it even says on it. And obviously, yeah, so the battery pack obviously doesn't say anything on it, which you kind of have to be a bit careful with these batteries from other countries, so don't start charging them when you're not around. Also, it came with a head mount thing, so you can strap it to your head, which is kind of useful, I guess. Probably never use that, but for £12.89, we're going to test this out tonight. We're going to go out, we're going to do a bit of mountain biking. The main thing I want to test is how well I can see in all 3 different settings, and also we're going to do a battery test because the claimed battery life is between 2 to 6 hours. Obviously 2 hours I'm assuming is the brightest, which is the one we're going to actually test it on. We're going to see if we can actually get 2 hours on the brightest. I don't think we will, but we're going to test it out anyway. Right, let's jump over to nighttime. And it's dark. So guys, when I am normally riding outdoors, I'm using this light here, this little moon meteor. Now this is on the weakest setting, so before we actually switch on this cheap light, let's actually test what I normally ride with in its free settings. So a bit brighter actually in real life, like in person. This is definitely a lot smaller at what I can see on the GoPro. Okay, so this is the weakest and this is the brightest, and there are a couple in between. So you've got slightly less bright, even less, and completely the weakest. So this is the main one we're going to compare it to. This is the brightest one for this moon meteor light. But if we switch this off now, we are going to press this one for the first time. Now it should be the lowest setting first. So let's do it. Weakest setting of this cheap light is probably as bright as the middle one, or maybe even the brightest one on the moon meteor light. Right, let's go up a notch. So this is the middle one, and I can see pretty much everything right now. This is easily as bright as the brightest on the moon meteor, but the main one we want to see is the brightest. Okay, so from the medium to that, it's not much different, but it's definitely bright enough to be able to see. Lighting is quite central, I would say. It doesn't go out, it goes wide enough to see like this little single track of trail, but it's not like absolutely crazy. But for 12 quid, I've got to say that's pretty impressive. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the camera down on the floor, and I'm going to ride towards the camera with the brightest setting on each of them, so we can see how different it is. So the first one is going to be the moon meteor on its full brightness, riding towards this camera. Now bear in mind, it will actually be a bit brighter in real life than actually on this camera, but let's have a look what this looks like. Okay, that was the brightest setting on the moon meteor. Now I'm going to try it on the cheap eBay light on full brightness to see the difference in like how it actually looks from somebody else. Right, let's do it. Turn this one off, blind. Now, I don't know if you can actually tell any difference on this camera, but so what I will say from first impressions of just like comparing these two lights is that the cheap one has a very, how to explain it? Basically, it's very spotlight in the middle, a very dark, bright circle in the middle, and then there's like a big just circle of like not as bright light. But when you compare it to the moon meteor light, it just feels like the moon one has a very distinct, sharp point of where it lights up, and not so much around the side, which is kind of normal for like road, because it doesn't need to be so wide. This one is wider, but it's not as bright as I thought it was going to be. Oh, the cheap eBay light, they claim it's something like 10,000 lumens. Now lumens are kind of like impossible to measure really, but it definitely doesn't really feel like what I would expect 10,000 to feel like, but it's not exactly not bright. So there is one other test I want to try, and if I can find it, this light says you can use it with an external battery pack. So right here I have one. It's a 10,000 milliamp one. It's currently got 68% battery, so in theory, because this uses just a standard USB to go into its own battery, if I unplug that and plug it into this external power bank, it is supposed to work, but right now it's not. Right, let me try that again and see if it... Okay, this time the light has come on the back. It's only showing one light, and it is turning on, and it is going to full brightness, but it does show that the light only has 1% battery, so, and it's actually just turned off now. So a 10,000 milliamp 0.5 portable charger doesn't seem to be quite strong enough to be able to hold it, even when this has got nearly 70% battery. Okay, right, so I want to ride this thing now on full beam and see what it's actually like to ride. Around for a little bit now, for about half an hour, and I will say it's fine when the trails are just like simple gravel kind of trails, but as soon as it gets tight, twisty, and a little bit sketchy, it just doesn't quite like pick up. It doesn't really show the trail in as much definition as you kind of need for when it's really technical. So yeah, it's a little bit sketchy. Now typically for mountain biking you would ideally have a helmet light as well, so you see exactly where you're going everywhere. Obviously you can put this on your helmet, and I think it would actually make quite a good helmet light. But we're going to continue riding this and try and drain the battery. I've currently done about half an hour and it's still showing 3 bars. So just going to keep riding around and hopefully try and drain it out. They say between 2 to 6 hours. 2 hours should be their max on their brightest setting, which is what I'm running it at. So let's just drain this battery. For about 54 minutes, and the first green indicator light has gone, so we're down to 2 lights. So in theory there's 1 hour left. Unless it's going to be 3 hours, then it might be 1 hour per light, but we're going to carry on riding. One thing I'm very interested to know with this light, with a lot of like cheap and knockoff sort of lights, the unbranded ones, they tend to have this very the battery indicator is very off. Like it doesn't really, it's very hard to actually understand how long you have left or whatever, because sometimes it will just go from like full to dead in pretty much like instantly. So it'll be interesting to see if this one actually goes down like gently, so you can actually control it and everything. I'm going to continue riding it on the highest possible setting, currently at 54 minutes. So let's just see how long this lasts. If it lasts 1 more hour, then it has reached its minimum target. Remember that, guys, £12. what I mean with like these unbranded ones. It's been what, like 6 minutes, 5 minutes, it's now 1 hour 2, and we've lost the second lighting. So is it going to go really thick and fast? I can't really see it lasting completely near enough 1 hour on one light, but we will see. This is what I was saying, this is what I mean. You never really know how good the indicator is. So far it's below where it should be. If I was going to be estimating that 2 hour mark, we're going to see if it's going to hit it, will it or not. It's getting cold out. This has been quite surprising really for me, because I am currently at 2.5 hours and it's still on the one light. This is exactly what I mean. You just never know when it's going to die. So I'm going to head back now and just leave this on running until it eventually dies. I'm going to leave the clock running and we'll jump over to the sofa in the morning, and hopefully this thing will have died. I'll see you in the morning. Right guys, we are back and we have finished the ride. We've done the testing of the light. So first things first, let me tell you how long it lasted. And this one actually surprised me because it went down from 3 lights to 2 in like about an hour. And then within about 10 minutes or less, it dropped that middle light. So I was really expecting this to die within the next sort of like 20 minutes of that drop in to that last light. But amazingly, somehow it lasted until 2 hours and 57 minutes. So that is actually pretty impressive, considering it claims a 2 hour minimum, which is what I was expecting to be on the brightest setting. Now, I will say, when I was riding this, I kept it on full brightness the whole time. However, towards the end of the ride, I did notice that it had actually dipped itself to a lower setting. It was probably on that for maybe like 10 minutes before I actually noticed. You could sort of maybe take off maybe 10 minutes or so, but still, even getting over the 2 hour mark for this light is actually pretty damn impressive. Also, what I will say with this light, which I'm actually quite impressed with, what I expected to happen when the battery was getting lower and draining was that the beam would actually get less, but it stayed consistently bright the whole time. It didn't dip, it didn't get less bright over the time the battery life was draining. Impressive. Now we tried to use this light with the battery pack, which it is meant to be able to do. It claims it's meant to be able to do. For some reason, that didn't really work. Even though the battery pack had nearly 80%, this literally just died within a few minutes. So I'm guessing the battery pack that I have doesn't output enough power, voltage, to actually run this light. So I'm not sure which battery packs you would have to use to make it work, because that one I have is a fast charge one, so I was expecting that to work. So is this bike good enough for a mountain bike ride? Now, if you are going to use this light on its complete own, then yeah, probably it's not quite good enough. Now, I think if you combined it, like you probably should, with a helmet light, it would be a good entry level if you just wanted to do some like simple, basic night riding, nothing too sketchy. It would be a great entry level, especially at like £13. It's a bargain. But if you were just going to use it on its own, it's not quite bright enough. It's kind of bright enough, but it doesn't quite light up the trails in the way that you can really pick out your line and pick out what you're going over or around. It just doesn't kind of give like the definition of what you're going over. Everything looks kind of flat. You can't tell if it's a big drop or a big log in your way. Like, it just doesn't quite cut it. So as a standalone mountain bike light, it's probably not quite good enough, but it's a great entry-level one if you just wanted to just get out on a few simple trails. And to be fair, at £13 you could probably just buy 2 of these, stick 2 of these on your bars, or possibly even 1 on your helmet, and I think you would actually be very much good to go. Now, I don't know where I stand with this light on regards to using it on the road, because it is like obnoxiously bright, and if you are gonna use this on the road, you are definitely going to need to be like cautious and to not blind other people. You're probably not going to want to use it on its brightest setting. You want to use it on its lowest setting and make sure it's dipped down, because the problem with these kind of lights on the road, they're just too bright for everybody else. On the trails they're okay, on the road they're probably just a bit too bright. So if you are going to use it on the road, just make sure you dip it. Probably never put it on the full brightness, or if you do put it on the full brightness, be very aware of people oncoming to you. But where I think this light may be an actual real great light for a lot of people is for gravel riding. Now, for simple gravel riding, this might be really pretty much perfect, because gravel is typically pretty just simple, and if you are on actual gravel trails, it will do the job perfectly fine. And for 13 quid, it's an absolute bargain. Right now, I've obviously only tested it this one time, so I don't know how reliable it's going to be in the long run. So if you are going to have something like this, you're probably going to need to make sure you have a backup light just in case. But time will tell if it actually holds up, if it doesn't break. For 13 quid, I don't know. So one last question I want to answer is it good value for money? And well, for £13, considering the brightness of this light, it is good value for money. Time will tell if it holds up, and it will continue to be good value for money. But the fact remains, it's £13. It's a very bright light. It's brighter than my Moon Meteor one, which isn't designed for mountain biking, isn't designed to be amazingly bright. It's just made to be like a commuter light for sort of normal roads. But this light costs £13. And it comes, even with a rear light, it comes with a head mount. So yes, right now I'm gonna say it is bloody good value for money, considering other lights of this sort of brightness and stuff are way expensive. So guys, that was the test of the cheap eBay light, £13, absolute bargain when you think about it. Hold up or not, I don't know, but I will keep you guys updated if it does break or anything. I'll probably use this on my bikepacking trips from now on. I'll just stick that on my bike as well as a backup just in case, just for that extra bit of brightness. It's not perfect, far from it. It's not the best standalone mountain bike light, of course. It's £13, but for an entry level, if you just want to go and hit some trails at night, I don't think you can go wrong with a £13 eBay light if you do not want to spend the hundreds of pounds on the official branded mountain bike lights. So guys, I will see you in the next adventure. Keep smiling, enjoy the adventure. Peace.